Welcome back to Le Mans for the second race in the Le Mans Esports Series Super Final. We've had one race, and what a race it was. An epic battle from start to finish. 2 hours, that one. This one, another 2-hour battle. This one focusing on Ford versus Ferrari from 1960s. What an incredible battle that was. We have our 12 teams. We have 35 competitors sitting by, ready to start the race. So this time over to our 2 race commentators. We've seen him once before, Chris McCarthy, but this time he's lost his bow, and he's joined by Harry.
Thanks very much, Bryn. Yes, I'm now joined in the studio by Harry Jacks. Harry, first of all, welcome. Exciting race coming up, Ford versus Ferrari.
Absolutely, it's an absolute classic in terms of Le Mans and just motorsport in general. Ford GT40 and the Ferrari 330 P4. Very similar in aspects to what we've just seen in race 1 in terms of the Shelby and the Ferrari in that one. Not too many years between them, so it's going to be interesting to see how they compare.
Well, the only difference now is, of course, we've got a reverse grid. It went off qualifying for race 1. Now we've taken the championship standings, flipped them around, and that's how we formed the grid. So adds in a little different aspect, doesn't it?
Yeah, obviously we saw some certain drivers and certain teams performing really well last race, and now they've got to try and do the same thing, but fighting through from the back of the grid. And we saw by that pretty much whole race battle in the midfield that it's not easy to pass people and get away from them, especially with that massive back straight down the Mulsanne. So it's going to be interesting to see how they make progress, and if the guys who didn't have a particularly good race in the first race that they had can hold on to their good positions at the start of this race.
Well, 2 great cars, but they carry some differences, don't they? Which car do you think is going to be the better? Of course, in the budget, Ferrari was the £20 million car and 16 million for the Ford. So if we're looking at that, we'd say Ferrari should be the better. SMP, MAD and Advocatus have gone for that car. Do you expect them, if they can get into a good position, to disappear off, or do you think this might be a bit closer than we think?
It's difficult. From what I know, what I've heard, we're expecting the Ferrari to be a bit quicker in terms of lap time, but it's likely to have to make an extra pit stop. So what we're going to have to look at is that they might run away at the start of the race, and then as the race gets towards the end, it'll come back when it has to make its extra pit stop. So it's going to be a bit of a cat and mouse duel, I think.
Well, as we said, we have flipped those championship standings. So Advocatus, we just said to watch out for them. They're going to be at the head of the field with wildcards, and of course tyre wall as well. Wildcats on the front row, tyre wall just behind. So those are the teams that are going to be at the front of the field. MAD, who won the first race, Veloci is second. They're going to be towards the back, as will be Baguette Racing, and then we've got a load more teams in between. But let's get going then for the second race of the Le Mans Esports Series Super Final. Let's head down to the grid. Our teams and drivers are ready to go racing for the second time this weekend, as are we. It's going to be a fantastic race, 2-hour race ahead of us once again. And Advocatus are going to be at the head of the field for this one. Ford versus Ferrari it is. Drivers are now in the rigs. Grid is set. Let's hope we have a nice and clean start. And here we go, that is the race underway. Then you can see on board already we've got lots of changes going on before we've even got to the first corner up towards the Dunlop chicane. It looks like we're 3 wide on that screen there. Oh, and almost a little bit of contact there. Drivers just heading through the first corner. I wonder if we've had anyone off already. Yes, we have. We've got someone off, just trying to recover at the moment. We'll pick up who that is in just a second. I worry that might have been SMP Racing. But the rest of the field heading through the Dunlop chicane without any problems. Tyre wall, I think, have dropped down the field. We're on board with them at the moment. SMP Racing, apologies to those guys. They're up in 3rd as it stands at the moment. There is Veloci. They're in 7th place, so right in the middle of the order as it stands. But we did have someone with a bit of a bad start. More cars struggling. We got someone out on the grass there, trying to get going again. They're going to lose a lot of distance to the rest of the field before we even get to the Mulsanne straight. You can see Baguette Racing there under a little bit of pressure. Someone slowing up on the inside. So a lot has happened at the start of this race. The grid is going to look very different to the race order we have now. But thankfully, everyone still seems to be circulating.
Yeah, they're also desperate to try and make up positions early on in this race. Trying to get in a good position for this first slipstream that we're going to have down the back straight. And you see cars side by side already. But so teams trying to make their way up from the back. The guys at the front trying to hold them off, and there seems like there was a bit of contact a fair few times through those first few corners, but they're all just trying to pick up a slipstream now and try and get in a position to outbrake someone into the Mulsanne corner.
Well, of course, we don't have the chicanes for this. We're on the pre-90s Le Mans circuit at the moment, and looked like, I think that may have been Tirewall Racing having just a couple of words with perhaps one of our adjudicators out in the arena. They are around at the moment just to be keeping an extra eye on what is going on circuit, but we are approaching the Mulsanne corner now. There is Veloci side by side with Keep It Simple Racing, and Veloci are going to take that place. Up ahead you can see Wildcats are leading the way from Advocatus, so a much better start to the race than they had last time. Advocatus were pretty much non-existent in that first race. They were off the back of the field, but now the grid has been reversed. They're at the front of the field. They're in the Ferrari 330 as well, the more expensive car, so ideally that would be the car that would go a little bit faster. Advocatus have spent a little bit more money on this race than they did in the last one, and at the moment it appears to be paying off. They're in second place behind the Wildcats team, who started very strong in race number 1 as well, faded slightly towards the end of the race, but Wildcats once again featuring very well at the front early doors. Now there was a change for third place. MAD Motorsport, our race 1 winners, have gone up to third place. A great move in Arnage. It looked to me, MAD Motorsport may have started all the way at the back of the field, Harry, but now they're up to third and we've not even completed a lap.
Yeah, it's interesting to see the guys on the front row swap positions, so you've got Wildcats ahead of Advocatus now, but obviously they're in the Ferrari, which we expect to be quicker, so it'll be interesting to see if it's going to take them long to pass the Ford that's currently leading. But yeah, as you say, they all just about made it through so far this first lap. Some interesting moves going on. Obviously a nice overtake by Veloci into the hairpin with a nice out-braking manoeuvre. We'll see if they can all make it through this first lap unscathed.
That is Lewis and Jacob there from Wildcats, just getting themselves settled. How are you doing, guys? Very good at the moment. It's all thumbs up at the time being, but there is a long race ahead. They are leading the way at the moment, but Wildcats very happy with how things are going so far. They've got Shoma Takaya in the rig at the moment. Shoma, very, very quick driver indeed. I'm sure many players from the Asia region would have heard of Shoma. And at the moment, he is the one leading the way as they come through turn number 1 and now up towards the Dunlop chicane. It is the Wildcats car that is leading from Advocatus. This is great driving from Advocatus to be in such a good position early on. Harry, would have been easy for Advocatus to lost a lot of confidence with that race 1 result, but they've clearly picked themselves up. They know they've got a good car for race 2. They had a good grid position, and at the moment they're taking advantage of that. Pete too.
Absolutely, and you can see on screen they are hungry to get back into the lead. I think they're going to have a very good opportunity coming out of this corner, then using the top speed of that Ferrari to make their way past the Ford. And he's going to be under incredible pressure from another Ferrari as well. They could even be 3 wide at some point down the straight. The Ferraris are battling amongst themselves as they try and latch onto the back of the Ford, picking up that slipstream now. You can see them closing in every so often, and they're getting close to the back now, and they'll be pulling out of that slipstream any moment to try and make that move under braking.
Well, down the Mulsanne straight we go. Advocatus have just dropped to third place, it seems there. Our top 3 very much together at the moment as we fire down the Mulsanne straight. The speed these cars get up to is extraordinary now. MAD Motorsport looking to go into the lead once again. It's smiles on the faces for the Advocatus team. They're in a fantastic position at the moment, but they are sitting in third place behind what is a fantastic battle forming up ahead with MAD Motorsport trying to take the lead from Wildcats. Wildcats holding on well at the moment, but there is Advocatus, there is Wildcats, the car in the middle we haven't seen just yet, but you'll see it very shortly. There they are, second place team MAD Motorsport. SMP Racing, ever improving SMP. Oh, and someone's gone wide. Well, just as we were going to talk about them, SMP Racing disappeared off our screens, and they look like they've just missed their braking point by a country mile there, Harry.
Yeah, it's a very easy mistake to do. You're on the brakes very hard for a long period of time, and if the car just starts to oversteer on entry, there's pretty much no recovery from that point. But they've had to do the best they can. They're down to 9th now, so they're still in the group of cars, so they can fight from there. But not ideal to drop from 4th to 9th. No, like a click of a finger.
And it's easy, isn't it? I mean, SMP Racing were fourth. They could see they were catching 3 cars up ahead. They were getting closer.
Well, they're out of shape
and they're
now
out
as
of shape
well.
once again. SMP Racing all over the place at the moment. They've got to try and regather this and regather it very, very quickly. SMP Racing are now going to put into the clutches of losing even further positions out. They've got 2 more teams now closing in Mighty 38 and Keep It Simple. SMP Racing in a load of trouble. And what I was going to say is, of course, that as they're getting closer to 3 teams ahead and a potential chance at a race lead, that is when it's sometimes most easiest to make a mistake, and now they're losing even more positions.
Yeah, so obviously we expected the Ferrari to be running away at the front of it, but they're having a lot of trouble with, it looks like, oversteer with that car. Every time they turn into a corner, it's just the rear end's trying to overtake the front end, and you see the Fords are all over them. Obviously on that back straight, the Ford's actually got the legs on the Ferrari, but it's in the corners where we expect it to be better, but it's still sliding all over the place as he's desperately trying to hold on to that thing and protect the position. But he's looking like he's got hold of it and trying to get back onto that Ford.
Well, news just coming in that we have got 5 second penalties going out to 2 teams, and SMP Racing is one of them. I believe Veloci might be the other one, which would be a huge disappointment for them. They are in 5th place, and considering where they are in the championship, sitting in 2nd place, this would be a huge disappointment for the Veloci team. So penalties unfortunately being awarded, but we are on board with our 2nd place team. We are looking at our leaders, Wildcats, who are just going a little bit tight into the braking zone. Differing racing lines. Myself on Bo touched on this in race number 1. You tend to get a mixture of lines going into that Dunlop chicane, don't you?
Yeah, so obviously with the way these cars work, you can sort of throw them in on the brakes, and there's a move
that
going
looks
on.
like
He's
a
up the
change,
inside.
Is that a change we were just on board with? That may have even been a change for the race lead going up towards Tech Rouge. Let's have a look then. It is MAD Motorsport have just taken the race lead. Fantastic move there into the left-hander. Not an easy place to overtake that one, particularly in these cars.
Yeah, he must have got a fantastic run out of the Dunlop chicane, and as they come down the hill, he must have just thrown up the inside and made it stick. A brilliant move.
But the only problem is now they're in the position where they're the one punching the hole.
Here comes the Ford. So you can see it closing up, and he's going to be pulling alongside any second and probably taking that position back so easily in a straight line. It's disappointing for the leaders who are now dropping down to 2nd, but they've got to do all that hard work again.
And there you go. Wildcats go straight back into the lead. They accept the invitation and take the tow that comes with being behind someone on the Mulsanne straight, and they have gone through into the race lead. So Wildcats back into the lead. MAD Motorsport have shown their hand that they're here to take a race win and another $3,000 in the process. They are there in 2nd place. Fantastic racing going on at the moment. This race number 2 of the Le Mans Esports Series, Ford versus Ferrari on the pre-90 Le Mans circuit. Just getting into things, lap 3 of 32, so a long way to go in this race. There are your 2 leaders, there is 3rd, and there is a very, very close battle for 4th place, being led by Williams at the moment, with Racing Baguette and Tyre Wall in just behind. There you can see Wildcats just chatting about strategy perhaps. Of course, we've got to take the likes of pit stops into account, so that's probably what they're going to be going through at the moment.
Possibly. It'll be interesting to see what kind of strategy they take with this, because obviously, as I've said at the beginning of this race, the cars are quite similar to the last race we had, the first race. So where they maybe use the same drivers that they used in that first race because they're familiar with the characteristics of the car, or if they try and throw a 3rd driver who wasn't involved in the first race in because they're fresher.
When you tell us a little bit about the differences between the 2 cars, of course, it would have cost 20 million to get that Ferrari car, and SMP MAD Advocatus spent the extra 4 million of their 150 million budget available to get that, rather than using the Ford GT40. Is this a race you would have taken a hit on and gone for the Ford, or do you think the Ferrari carries that much more of an advantage that it was important to take the Ferrari?
I think so. Like on paper, you look at it and go, you've only got 2 cars to choose from. It's 4 million between them. So there are cars coming up later on in this series which are going to have a much bigger difference in price. So you can see some moves going on track as the Ford and Ferrari side by side once again, and the Ferrari trying to do its best to maybe look to make a move under braking into the final chicane.
Well, here we go down towards the chicane then. You think this is the last lap, the way they're battling. Wildcats versus MAD. MAD dive down the inside. Wildcats just hanging on at the moment. Well, Wildcats hanging on for dear life in the race lead here. MAD Motorsport want to get through and want to get through quickly. Advocatus will be enjoying this. They're only 2 seconds back in third place, and with every time Wildcats defend or MAD go on the move, they get closer and closer. So we could have 3 for the lead here. Oh, and round the outside at Dunlop chicane. MAD trying to move into the right-hander. That, well, it didn't pay off, and it's no surprise to see a strange overtaking opportunity taken from MAD there.
It is, but it's the same part of track that we saw the Ferrari take the lead last lap, so you can kind of see how that move would have unfolded last time round. And again, they're up the inside going into the right hander, and they're going to now be in the same position they were a couple of laps ago, where they're leading, but the Ford with a slipstream and its powerful engine is probably just going to drive straight on by again.
Well, it's strange to see that they keep taking this option, but you can't say they are not trying. MAD Motorsport lead once again going on to the Mulsanne straight. Whether they'll lead at the end of it will be answered very soon, and it's no surprise to see Wildcats go straight past, but MAD right in the slipstream now as we head down towards Mulsanne corner. But look how much that gap is extending. Wildcats just pulling away as we approach Mulsanne corner, and this is going to leave MAD Motorsport with a lot of work to do throughout the rest of the lap. Once again, Advocatus as of yet haven't really been able to take advantage of what's going on in the battle for the lead, but they are there or thereabouts and shouldn't be discounted just yet. As we go through the curve, Wildcats still leading. We've still got a very close battle for fourth, which I'm sure will pick up at some point when the battle for the lead calms down, but at the moment it's still very close. And here we go, Baguette Racing we are on board with as we go in towards Mulsanne corner. You can see there in fifth place. Oh, someone's run wide up ahead. That's Advocatus. Advocatus run wide, and they've just invited a lot of pressure now as we head up towards Indianapolis. Williams are just ahead of us, but Baguette Racing trying to slip up the inside, unable to do so. Looks like Williams just have the power to hang on at the moment. And Advocatus now look in a little bit of trouble here as Williams pulled to the outside. Advocatus trying to defend, but I think Williams are going to have the legs to do it before we even get to the corner through Indianapolis. Baguette Racing are going to try and go with them round the outside under brakes. Fantastic move. Baguette Racing up into fifth place, but will they stay there? They're now trying to challenge Williams for third place. Advocatus unable to take the place back, so it's up to fourth place then for Baguette Racing.
Yeah, some fantastic driving by those three guys to be able to get through that sequence of corners without too much contact, if any contact at all. But you see they're still nose to tail and trying to pick up a potential overtaking opportunity, but heading towards the Porsche curves, very difficult to make a move there. So I'd expect them to sort of try and go in single file and hope if there's any mistakes from the cars around them to try and pick up positions that way if they can.
Well, Advocatus, the pressure does not stop there because a further car now coming into play in the shape of Kitty Crew. Kitty Crew have joined the party then. They are now wanting a little bit of this battle, which is of course for third place. $1,000 to the person who is able to come out in the head of this battle. Advocatus though, great run out the Porsche curves, and they draw alongside Baguette Racing going up towards the Ford chicanes, and this could be Advocatus taking a place back, or will it? Baguette Racing coming across under braking, and Baguette Racing hang on for the time being. There was certainly a little bit of contact there it seems, and Advocatus are now having to defend themselves for their position. So well, hectic racing going into the Ford chicane once
Absolutely.
again. Advocatus just hanging on.
Yes, you could see the Baguette Racing car sort of went in really deep on the brakes to maintain position, but then got all out of shape and had no racing line at all through that final chicane. And there's a dive bomb coming in from Advocatus again, but they can't quite make it and have to back out. Again, it's going to be very difficult for them because most overtaking positions are at the end of a straight into a braking zone, and the Ford GT40 has just got such good straight line speed. It's so difficult for them to actually make the move despite on paper having a faster car.
I don't believe Kitty Crew at the back of this queue were as close as this the last time we went down the Mulsanne straight, but now they are. Let's see if they're able to make any kind of impact as we now enter the straight and about 20 seconds later we'll come out of it, maybe even more than that. Down the straight it is then. This is our battle for third place. There you can see concentration levels at maximum at the moment for all the drivers. That's half of our teams in the rigs at the moment. This is the time where they decide whether to go left, right, down the middle. If that opportunity comes up and that situation presents itself. But Baguette Racing here just behind Williams Racing at the moment. Williams Racing at the head of this queue are going to have to surely are going to have to go defensive from Baguette Racing here. Baguette Racing able to hang on but not able to go past, and behind that looks like the Kitty Crew have gone past Advocatus before we've got to the braking zone. So good driving there from Kitty Crew, line that move up with great driving on the last lap. Kitty Crew have now gained a further position. Advocatus starting to drop down a little bit, unfortunately, but this would still be a very good result for them in 6th place. And just up ahead, didn't look like there was any changes between the Williams and Baguette Racing team. And there you can see the drivers once again in the rigs. The arena starting to get a little bit busy now. Fans enjoying this one who are here at Le Mans with us.
It's interesting to see that the Advocatus car obviously coming into
fantastic racing, I'm sure, all the way to the end of race number 2. This lap number 5 of 32, Harry. Advocatus we're looking at there going through Indianapolis. Very much keeping things under shape at the moment, and we will exit the action just for a little while as we head down to Bryn, who's caught up with Baguette Racing.
Thanks very much there. I'm with Alex from Baguette Racing. They had that amazing third place in race 1. So you've earned some money, got $1,000 in the back pocket, 4th at the moment. Looking good out there?
Yeah, we're looking good. Aurelian is really strong on this track with this type of car, so he's just going to follow Williams to have the draft in the straight line to catch the first people. So yeah, we're looking good now.
So confident for this race here. What is your strategy with the next, 7 races?
Lost the less points we can, actually, because the guy in front of us right now are not playing the same strategy as us. So we just have to have less second behind at the last race and to be able to overtake them at the last and take the championship.
I see, good stuff. Well, good luck anyway. There you go. So brief insight, trying to stay as close as they can points-wise. So when it comes to race 9, they'll be starting as close to the front as possible. Back to you, Chris.
Thanks very much, Bryn. Great to hear from Baguette Racing there. And speaking of Baguette Racing, there you can see them on screen, continuing to pressurise the Williams Racing team at the moment, and it was almost, well, I almost thought they were going to go for a move there. Baguette Racing thought the better of it in the end, but as we said, lots of spectators coming in and out throughout today, and I'm sure even more so tomorrow as well. And Baguette Racing could be carrying a little bit of pressure because they are the all-French lineup we have here at Baguette Racing. I'm sure there'll be plenty of fans who will want to see them go and take a victory around the circuit as well. We're being played out on a big screen outside our arena, so people in the fan zone, it's a lovely area out there, and it looks like a lovely day as well, can sit and enjoy the racing that they are seeing on screen, with Baguette Racing currently trying to go into 3rd place ahead of Williams, Harry.
Yep, it's interesting to note that they're picking up this victory now, but I was going to mention that Baguette Racing currently in that position, although they started 10th, and in front we've got MAD Motorsport winning, and they started last. So it's interesting to see that already this early on they've managed to work their way through from the back to the front. But for these guys here, Baguette Racing, it's going to be so difficult for them to overtake because they're in the same car as the car in front. There's no real advantage for them to gain, so they're going to have to try and force them into an error.
Well, Baguette Racing, as we said, battling for 3rd, but our 2 leaders certainly battling at some stages, and they may continue to battle again. There's every chance this could turn into the battle for the lead, particularly if we see penalties going out to the 2 leaders should they get involved in a little bit of a battle that doesn't end so well. But here's Baguette Racing just taking a wide line there through Mulsanne. You can see the 2 leaders up ahead, and our lead car doing a very good job at the moment. MAD Motorsport repeating what they did in the first race in starting to pull away. And in race 1, once we saw MAD get away, they were never seen again. So Wildcats have a real task on their hands if they want to stop that from happening. But this is our battle for third. Williams versus Baguette Racing. Williams, of course, if you weren't with us in race 1, Williams Racing unfortunately ended up or had a trip to the barriers at one stage at this very corner at Arnage when they were fighting with Mighty 38. The battle got just a little bit too intense. Williams got caught on the outside, nowhere to go, and that barrier on the outside of Arnage arrives very quickly if you happen to be stuck on the outside of someone. It did result in a penalty, a 10-second stop-go penalty for Mighty 38, but Williams Racing did recover to 6th place, giving them a total of 7 points. And if they can finish where they are, they'll take their tally up to 17 points. How would that fare to the rest of the field? Well, MAD would be on 24 points if the race was to finish now. Veloci aren't having the best of runs considering they picked up a penalty. Baguette Racing, as you can see, were 3rd place last time. They're in a good position at the moment. So that was the standings at the end of round 1. And we'll call that the standings at the moment. Any standings I do read out between now and the checkered flag will be provisional until we get to the flag. Of course, this will all change when we get to the end of race 2. And whatever the championship looks like at the end of race 2, we'll reverse the grid off the back of that. So our championship leader will start last in race 3. And 12th place in the championship will start from pole position. But that's what MAD Motorsport, Harry, were faced with at the start of this race. They've done a fantastic job to get into the lead, and they've made the action all for 3rd place rather than for the lead. Wildcats also doing a great job in 2nd. This is where all the racing is taking place for 3rd place. We've got Williams Racing there, Baguette Racing there in 4th place, and Kitty Crew likewise.
Yeah, Kitty Crew coming up from behind on these 2 guys. If they're not careful, they're trying to battle each other to try and make their way through the field, of course. But before too long, they can have another car to deal with, and that's going to be awkward for Baguette Racing. They're going to be focusing on attacking like they are now. They're right on the back bumper of that car in front. But if they don't make the move soon, they're going to have to also watch the rear view mirror as well.
Well, down the Mulsanne straight we go. Baguette Racing, you can see right on the tail of Williams Racing. Are they just staying patient, or are they about to make a move? We'll find out very shortly. I've got to say, Kitty Crew doing a great job there in 5th place. They were 4th in race 1, giving them a total of 9 points. This would be a great number of points if they could finish where they are in 5th place. It would give them another 8 points down on top of that, taking them up to 17 points. Mean they'd only be 7 points behind MAD if they were to finish in the lead of the race. So a fantastic job from Kitty Crew at the moment. It is very, very close indeed. Points mean seconds when we get to the 9th and final race, and we do our Le Mans start for the 2nd time this weekend. Every second you get, every point you get, advantage over the driver behind means you start a second ahead of them in the race. So every point counts. You've got to finish as high as possible, even if you haven't got the quickest car in the race. But this battle rages on. Williams versus Baguette Racing. We are on lap 7 of 32, Harry. No pit stops as of yet, unfortunately. 1 or 2 penalties, as we mentioned. Do you expect it to still be a little while before we see anyone take a trip down the pits?
I reckon so. It's interesting because obviously we've got the leaders in the Ferrari that we expected to be quicker on paper and make that extra pit stop, but they're not pulling the kind of gap that they would have needed to be able to make that extra pit stop comfortably. So we've got some side-by-side action, defensive driving from the Williams team. Baguette Racing trying to take that wide line and get a switch back perhaps on the exit. You can see they've kind of got it working as they're now going to be pulling alongside that Williams car and then having the inside as they make the run to the Porsche curves.
Yeah, it looks like Baguette Racing has drawn alongside Williams then. as they now make their way up towards the Porsche curves, and this is not the place you want to be side by side with someone, but Baguette Racing dive down the inside, and Baguette Racing, it's taken them a few laps to do it, but they now go into third place ahead of Williams Racing. Early in the race still, but a very positive seventh lap here from Baguette Racing to get into that third place ahead of Williams. And further back, Kitty Crew just draw slightly closer with that move being made. Got a good run, lined that one up a couple of corners behind there, did Baguette Racing, and executed the move perfectly as well. So Baguette Racing get themselves into third place, $1,000 for them if they finish where they are at the end of the race. So fantastic stuff there from the all-French lineup.
Yeah, I love that move. We've got some more side-side action here. Is that the SMP car and the Keep It Simple car? A little bit of contact, but they made the move stick as they now drive away from that Keep It Simple car. So they've obviously had to back out to avoid a crash, and that's cost them that position.
Well, let's talk through who is out there. We've been talking about all the battles, all the moves that are being made currently out on circuit. Let's tell you who is in the rigs at the moment for Mighty 38. It is Chris Farkas, Wildcats of Shoma Takaya in the rig at the moment. Alex Harrison is out for CMP, unfortunately just a little bit down the order at the moment. Then we have Paul Arivalo for Keep It Simple. Kiyoe Matsusaka is in for Tyre Wall. Veloci have Noah Schmitz. And we have Igor Timitrev for SMP. Aurelian Mohammadi Malay is out for Baguette Racing. Robin Bechter out for MAD. Daniel Nyman is in for Kitty Crew. Yuan Yifan is out for Edward Cartus. And finally, Williams Esports have Fabien Piffet in the seat currently. And speaking of Fabien Piffet, just hanging with Baguette Racing as we go on to the Mulsanne Straight for the 8th time of 32. Baguette Racing, you can see just ahead now after that move into the Porsche curves. But Williams looking to respond here as we approach Mulsanne corner. Is Williams going to go by? Are they going to try and wait until we get to the braking zone to make their move? Sometimes you don't want to go too early in making a move down the Mulsanne Straight. You might see some teams just hold off for a while and then give it full guns when we get closer to the braking zone. Is that what Williams are doing? Are they just struggling to get a good enough run to draw alongside? Are they happy to sit in 4th place? All will be revealed very shortly. Let's see what happens when we get into the braking zone. It looks as if Williams are going to sit behind. They definitely just filled the mirrors of the Baguette Racing team there, but nothing more for the time being.
Yeah, obviously the roles were reversed from the last few laps that we've seen, so they kind of know what kind of pressure that each team were feeling. So Williams now doing the chasing on that Baguette Racing car. They know what it's like to have had that pressure being the leading car, being forced into a mistake. So obviously that move by Baguette Racing last lap was made into the Porsche curves, but it happened because of what happened 2 corners before through Indianapolis and Arnage, basically forcing the car ahead to go offline and getting that run out. And Williams obviously know that's what's cost them the position, trying to enforce that themselves. They're trying to do that through the same part of the track a lap later.
Well, let's look at how the Ferraris are getting on, because there was 3 of those chosen for this race. MAD Motorsport did pick the Ferrari, and they are leading the way at the moment. SMP Racing did as well, but they are down the field, unfortunately. Advocatus was the 3rd who picked it. So 6th place you can see for Advocatus. SMP were 9th place. And SMP, speaking of them, let's have a little bit more information about the SMP Racing team now. There you go. There is a little bit of info on the SMP Racing team. It's great to have them with us. One of the wildcard entries, along with Veloci as well, of course. SMP Racing with cars out racing in the Le Mans 24 hours as well. And drivers from their cars have been coming over to see how the esports team have been getting on, and likewise the esports team have been over to the garage to support the drivers who are getting ready to take on the 24-hour of Le Mans in 2019. So great to see that cross-reference, the team working as one this weekend. And there we can see Baguette Racing just going onto the Mulsanne straight now. Doing a brilliant job so far are Baguette Racing, third place in race number 1, and at the moment they are third as well. Let's talk a little bit about Ford versus Ferrari. Of course, it filled the 60s here at Le Mans. We had Ferrari absolutely dominate the early 60s, but then came along Ford. It took them a couple of goes to do it, but when Ford eventually got their win, it didn't stop for a little bit.
Yeah, so Ford came into this race with the GT40 Mark II, and it was on the back of, I think 6 consecutive Ferrari wins. So they pumped a lot of money into this project, and I think it was around $10 million, I think, at the time, to get the Ford GT where they wanted it to be, introduced it, I think, the 66 race, and it went on to not just beat Ferrari, but take all 3 podium positions. So it really was a challenger and a beater of the Ferrari at a time where they seemed invincible.
Yeah, of course, we've if you don't know the story, then of course they've got the film coming out a little bit later in the year. Ford versus Ferrari film, directed by James Mangold. Carroll Shelby will be played by Matt Damon, Ken Miles by Christian Bale. Henry Ford will be played by Tracy Letts. So a big cast. They are taking that film very, very seriously. There has been films made about Le Mans in the past, but are you excited to see what they've got in store for this one?
Absolutely. It's not something that I've followed massively as a child growing up or looked back on as through history for that kind of thing, but it's encapsulating for me that I want to try and watch it when it's out, because it's motorsport history. It's what I would care about, and I know there's a lot of motorsport fans out there who obviously wouldn't have been around at the time of that taking place, but because it's such an integral part to Le Mans and the history of it, it's nice to know about it, even if you weren't able to witness it firsthand.
Yeah, well, that Ford versus Ferrari battle, it was really came quite intense battle between the two manufacturers. You know, Ford, it was clear instructions that a car was needed to be built just for the purpose to go and beat Ferrari at Le Mans, and that's when the GT40 was born. Carroll Shelby, of course, who won Le Mans back in 1959, but then Aston Martin was brought in. He brought in driver Ken Miles. Ken made his statements about the G40. His thoughts were very clear that he didn't like it when he first got in, but as they started to develop the car and make some changes in '65, it took some big wins at Daytona and Sebring, but they weren't quite able to win Le Mans. They replaced some engines to try and do it. It was reliability they struggled with in their attempts, which saw them not win. But in 1966, they did go and take the win in the GT40. 8 cars entered, 4 of them didn't make it to the end, but it was worse luck for Ferrari, who had all cars breaking down, and Ford, well, when they did win it, they won it in style. They had that 1-2-3 victory, where, of course, it was a little bit of a strange end to the race. They came across the line with the 3 cars side by side, first and second, who were on the same lap. Ken Miles, who was leading the race, ended up didn't winning the race because Bruce McLaren, who was in the other car, went on to take victory by just 20 meters as they got to the line. Well, 2 stories. One story goes that Ken Miles slowed up to allow Bruce McLaren to win, as he didn't like the fact that he was being forced to come across the line side by side with all 3 cars. But the other goes that Bruce McLaren just put his foot down and went on to take the victory right as they got to the line. But it's a fascinating story, and we're reliving that story right now, right in front of our eyes. Ford versus Ferrari at the moment. Who is coming out on top? Well, of course, on that day it was the Ford who came out on top in 66. We're not using, of course we're reliving those battles at the moment, but the cars we are using for this one, as we go into, are the GT40, and we're using the 330 Spa as well. Well, we've talked a little bit about what happened in 66 when Ford took their famous 1-2-3 victory, which led to even more. If you want to know a little bit more about that, let's play a video that will show you all the info.
The stands are full this Saturday, June the 18th, and everyone is ready for the 1966 edition. The fuel tanks are full, the Ferraris are well placed at the start, but it was the Fords who dazzled everyone in qualifying, filling the first 4 places. Mr. Henry Ford is confident, and with good reason. It's Ford who will give the start. 4 in the afternoon, and the drivers sprint for their cars, their ambition to get away as quickly as possible in order to attack the 13.461 kilometre Sarthe circuit. An average start for the leading cars, especially the yellow Ford 8 of Whitmore, that was very close to colliding with the Ferrari 20 and the Ford 1 of Miles. It's the Ford 7 of Muir and Hill that's leading through the S's in the forest. Behind them, the peloton is bunched together. The Fords are still tapping out the pace, and all of this watched by the winner of the 1954 edition, Maurice Trintignant. Their tactics are simple: keep the pace high, force the Ferraris to follow, and hope that the Italian cars break down. The first time through in front of the stands, and 4 Fords in the leading 4 places. Gurney, Miles, Whitmore and McLaren. In 5th is the Ferrari of Rodriguez. Watch out for the mistake of the Bizzarini number 11. Everyone giving it their all in order to follow the infernal pace of the leading Fords and Ferraris. Some wouldn't get far. That the case of the Matra BRM of Josso and Pescarolo that soon had to throw in the towel. Porsche entered 7 cars and 6 of them would make it through to the finish. Up front, the fearsome pace is maintained, and the first 2 hours have seen Gurney cover 430 kilometres. It's time to refuel, and that's the case for the second place car of Piper and Atwood. The problem is serious. There's trouble with the water pump, and it's time to abandon for the Ferrari 16. The number 4 abandons 2, while the 2 gets going again. Under the eyes of Joe Bonnier, the Mark II of Whitmore and Gardner is out. Miles and Hume don't have such issues, and the 1 continues to run smoothly. At the front, the ferocious pace hasn't dropped at all. The Fords 1 and 3 lead from the Ferrari 27 and 20 of Rodriguez and Scarfiotti respectively. When the sun goes down, black smoke starts climbing towards the sky. Ogier slipped on some oil before heating the ASA at Pasquier. The 2 cars completely destroyed, and Ogier breaks both arms. The night, one of the shortest of the year, again proves tough. The P3 of Rodriguez and Ginter abandons when the gearbox breaks. The number of cars left in falls. Out of 55 that took the start, there are only 29 left when day breaks. In terms of the overall distance category, of course it's Ford leading. The 2 of McLaren and Eamon leads from the 1 of Miles and Hume. They're in the process of breaking all the records, while the peloton continues to decline in number. The Fords triumph, and the boss looks happy, but admits he was nervous right until the end. Victory now a mere formality for the firm from Detroit, despite a last-minute storm. Henry Ford asked the 3 drivers to come in at the same time. McLaren and Eamon in the 2 waited for Miles and Hume in the 1. 2, 1, 5, the winning Ford trio in 1966.
Well, there you have it then, the famous story played out for you, and you can see just how short the winning distance was. 20 metres still remains the shortest ever winning margin in Le Mans history to date. I just think watching that video there, Harry, you know, considering we've been here since Tuesday, just shows how different, how much Le Mans has changed over the years, and motorsport as a whole. We've been able to watch some of the practice so far and qualifying so far this week. You can see just how dangerous it was back then, how different the cars were. What's your thoughts on how Le Mans has changed?
I think predominantly it's down to safety purposes. These cars, especially pretty much starting in this era, then moving on through the next sort of decade or so, the development war in terms of just relentless speed that these manufacturers pursued meant that doing that straight down the Mulsanne and not having anything to stop them and reaching hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kilometers an hour. Essentially, what one car I think break into at 400 kilometers an hour, and you saw pictures in that film that we've just seen that there's cars lit at the side of the track, fire raging in them. It was so unsafe. So they had to evolve the circuit to be able to slow the cars down and make it safer, essentially.
Well, that's enough natter from us about the past. Let's go back to the present. Let's head down to Bryn, who is catching up with one of the teams.
I don't know, I was quite enjoying that natter about the old cars there. Thanks very much to Chris. Now, I'm here with Michael from Williams. What a great name, what a great team. A lot of pressure really on your shoulders.
There's a lot of pressure. The main goal for us is just to keep it consistent and look for that mid-race position and see where we stand halfway through, because it's these first couple of races where the different strategies of teams will put them higher up, but then further along the race, they'll start dropping down. So mid-pack, we'll see where we are, like race 4, race 5.
But of course, you're a team made up of 2 Brits, 1 person from France, so very much in this time zone. There are teams around that have got people from out on the Far East, you've got Australians, you've got people from the other side going to America and Mexico. So during the night, other teams are going to come into their own when it comes to suffering from jet lag and not suffering from jet lag.
Yes, this is a big part of having different people from like Americas and Asia. For us, I'm a bit of a night owl. I can sometimes keep focus even after long periods of hours. So we'll see what happens.
How much seat time have you had so far today?
About 6 hours, I would say.
Okay, so a fair bit. And strategy going forward, when are we going to see you in the seat?
So straight after this race, I'll be running the 919 around Silverstone for 2 hours.
Okay, we'll keep an eye on you there. Good luck for the rest of this one. So there you go, Williams Esports, the insight, they've got a strategy. They're not too worried about jet lag because they don't need to suffer from it because they're all from around these parts. Back to you, Chris.
Thank you, Bryn. Great to hear from the Williams team there. Bryn's going to be around the arena for the whole 24 hours, catching up with all the teams when anything develops and see how the guys are getting on. But we will go back to the race and find out what we have missed. SMP Racing 9th place there. You can see MAD Motorsport still leading from Wildcats in 2nd place. We're on board with Kitty Crew. We were just talking to Williams. There they are ahead of us. So Williams Esports just defending at the moment from Kitty Crew. That is for 4th place. Baguette Racing seem to have escaped since taking 3rd place. So Baguette Racing doing a brilliant job there at the moment. Down the back of the field, unfortunately struggling in this one, the likes of CMP and Tirewall Racing. CMP considering they were 5th in race 1. A little bit of a disappointment for them. Tirewall struggling for now, but they may be on a different strategy. Let's remember, they may be just taken the strategy to be quick in the middle phase of the 9 races and win some cash there. But this battle definitely getting very, very close now between Williams and Kitty Crew. We are about a 3rd race distance, and Kitty Crew look like they're about to make their move.
Yeah, they certainly are. It's interesting to pick up the fact that we're lap 12 of 32 now. Obviously, halfway, if you cross over halfway, you're only going to have to do 1 pit stop. So 16 is the halfway point. I was expecting, let's say, at the beginning of the race, the Ferraris have to make 2 pit stops. They've not made any pit stops yet. So they're getting pretty close to that crossover point where they are going to be just quick on track and not have any penalty of an extra pit stop. So it's something to keep an eye out for over the next 3 or 4 laps. Obviously, our race leader, the MAD Motorsport car, is a Ferrari, so we may see that in the pits in the next few laps. But if it crosses that 16-lap marker, they're looking really strong for the rest of this race.
Thanks, Harry. Well, there we go. Williams leading the way, going down towards the Ford chicane. Looks like the weather's just starting to look a little bit different now as we get into the middle phase of this second race. 2-hour race it is as well for the Ford versus Ferrari category, and the Kitty crew just trying to line up and move, but being patient in the process. Back with our race leaders, MAD, 12 seconds ahead of Wildcats at the moment. This would be a brilliant result for Wildcats, who were 11th in the last one, giving them a total of 2 points. If they finish where they are, they'll go from 2 points to 13 points, so a big jump that'll be for Wildcats. I know they were looking very, very happy earlier when we had them on screen, and I imagine nothing has changed there at the moment. Baguette Racing third, Williams fourth, Kitty crew in fifth. Advocatus, they've dropped down a few places, but they seem to have put a stop to that for the time being in fifth place. And sixth place, sorry. Advocatus just trying to make this damage limitation at the moment. Veloci starting to come back up the order of Veloci, back up to seventh place. They were running higher than that earlier on, but let's go back to this because it looks as if we're about to see a move here from Kitty crew on Williams. We're now lap number 13 of 32. Williams having to just defend slightly. You can't weave down the Mulsanne straight. That was made clear in the driver's briefing. You can make one move and then go back to your original racing line, and Williams have got to be careful that they don't do that. Kitty crew just trying to get a run to get down the inside before we get to that braking zone, but they're going to have to go back to the outside now. In the tow they are. Let's see what happens when we get down to the braking zone. We'll certainly stick with this one. Kitty crew not in the tow at the moment, which could suggest that they're happy where they are, or are they? No, they're not. Down the inside they go. That's a fantastic move from Kitty crew, but it hasn't quite worked round the outside. That was brave stuff there from Williams, hanging on round the outside, not prepared to give up the position. And, well, as a result of that, they've hung on to the place.
Yeah, they took a big risk with that. It's obviously a car coming up the inside. You've got to hope that they leave you room on the exit, because otherwise you could end up like an incident that we saw in the first race. But they held on, they stayed brave, and they were left room. So good, fair racing. And by staying on the outside line, they were able to get the power down earlier because they were on a sort of a less tight line. So getting the power down earlier, better acceleration, managed to maintain their position, but they're coming under more pressure again through the chicane now from that Kitty crew car.
Well, out of Arnage we go, and it is still very, very close. We've got the chicanes coming up, of course, and the Porsche curve before that as well. And, well, if you don't think you're going to see any moves through there, guess what? We have seen plenty of moves through there already today. Just looking at the positions in the lower order, SMP keep it simple up there at the moment, but these two drivers continuing to fight like it is the last lap of this 24-hour event. This is the second of 9 races. To remind you of the format, we are doing 9 races. There is a $100,000 prize pool over those 9 races to be won in this race, in races 1 to 8. If you win, you get $3,000. If you're second, you get $2,000. If you're third, you get $1,000. But going into that last race, $25,000 is up for grabs for the winner, and there is money for the top 6 teams in that race alone. The grid for that race will be set over points that you score in races 1 to 8, and the points will result in the gaps between the drivers at the start of the Le Mans start. So if one team has 12 points and another team has 10 points, they get a 2-second head start over that team. That's pretty much how it works, fairly straightforward. We did see Le Mans starts being practiced from our drivers yesterday. We already saw one this morning as well. Some teams have practiced quite a lot just to make sure that they are quick as possible off the line for the 9th race.
Absolutely, it's a key aspect at the start of a race. All the cars are close together. It's the best time to try and make up position. So if you can get that Le Mans start nailed compared to the cars around you, you can easily gain a couple of rows off the grid. 3 or 4 positions, and you can see from on-track action how difficult it is to pass a car and also then stay ahead of that car and try and build a gap. So any kind of advantage you get at the start of a race is massive in terms of the entirety of the race itself.
And we rehearsed the ninth race, didn't we? We did just a little run through for the drivers for the ninth race to start, just to make sure they know exactly how things are going to work, so we don't have any problems there. You could see just how much of a difference it makes when someone was 5 points, i.e. 5 seconds behind one of the other teams, just how long the wait felt. That's definitely going to be something that is going to be taken into account for the drivers as the points are being scored. It is a long wait if you're 5, 6, 7 points back.
It's painful, I can tell you. So when you're waiting to start a race and you see other cars around you and other drivers around you jump in and go, and you've got to stand there waiting around, 5 seconds feels like 5 hours. It's incredible. So although top 3 places in the first 8 races are worth money, it's worth taking into account that everyone is fighting for a position, because in that last race where there's the most money available, every point matters.
Well, here we go. It looks like we're going to have a change of position, or are we? Williams having to defend their place once again, but round the outside. Well, they tried the inside last time, did Kitty Crew. That didn't work. This time they're going to try the outside, and it seems to have worked just a little bit better. Up to Indianapolis we go. That is, of course, the corner is going to lend itself to Williams. They're going to be on the inside, but if Kitty Crew can hold on the outside round the right, then they should be able to take the place going into the left. And here we go, into the right. Is the car going to get out of shape? It is for Kitty Crew. They're going to have to try and get it slowed down. Don't miss the apex, and they've done it. Brilliant move there from Kitty Crew. They're up a place. Fantastic move from Kitty Crew. Now 4 for them. Williams dropping to 5th place. That was certainly planned out from the start, wasn't it?
That was an incredible move. So riding on board with that Kitty Crew car, it looked like it was out of shape going through the right-hander. It went so wide and off the racing line, but somehow the anchor came out and they slowed it down into that left-hander, and they're now going to be looking to try and pull away from that Williams car if they can, because they don't want to keep squabbling. They need to try and get the head down, some clean air in front of them now, and try and push on. But it doesn't look like that Williams car is going to drop off anytime soon, that's for sure.
Well, this is crucial now. Kitty Crew have got to get the Porsche curves right. They've got to get a good run through the chicanes before they get up towards the Mulsanne straight, because once they get there, if Williams are where they are, then there's no doubt that they'll be challenging when they get down towards Mulsanne corner to take 4th place right back again. So Kitty Crew have got to get it right, but under pressure they are starting to make mistakes. Kitty Crew now may have to defend going in towards the 4 chicanes. Let's see if they pull to the inside. They don't, and they're into the pit. So this the first real team we've seen, first of our lead teams, shall I say, coming into the pits.
Yeah, so it could be a tactical decision. So they are just before the halfway point, but we're reasonably confident that Ford GT, I've expressed by all the other cars still continuing, it will be able to go to the end on one stop. But they obviously want to get a change of drive for it, maybe try and drop the car into some clean air, get an undercut on that Williams car, and then see where they file out when the Williams car decides to pit.
Well, into the pits they go then, and you'll see it does take a long time to get in and out of that pit lane. Driver change will now have to be made. You have to have a minimum of 2 drivers in each race. So of the 3 driver lineup you have, 2 drivers have to go in and race each race. So every time there is a stop, you'll see a driver change happen unless the team is to stop 2 or more times. When we get to the final race, though, that rule is altered slightly. In the final race, we have all 3 drivers having to go out. So Kitty Crew, with that pit stop, have gone down to 7th place, but as other teams come into the pits, that should change. Oh, what's happened there?
It looks like it might be the Veloci car from what we can see of the bonnet cam. It looks like on the entry or the corner through onto Mulsanne, they've managed to drop the car and it's gone in backwards. So obviously with his car's big rear engine, they're hoping that there's going to be no engine damage on that thing. But we'll hopefully try and find out what happened. But it's like they must have just dropped it on their way in. It's Noah Schmidt's behind the wheel. And it's a difficult corner. You want to try and carry as much speed as you can through there. And if you just maybe get on the grass on the entry, it's very easy for the rear end to overtake and off you go, which looks like what's happened to them.
Yeah, well, a bit of a disaster there for Veloci. They've already had 1 or 2 problems in this race, and they're now facing another one. So Veloci facing the wrong way for a brief moment. Now they're able to get going again. They're pretty much in a bit of a lonely race here, are Veloci at the moment in 6th place. A big gap to Mighty 38 ahead, and well, a not so big gap to the team behind. That incident they just got involved in means that they are now being caught by a Kitty Crew who have just come out of the pit. So this has worked nicely, this, for Kitty Crew. Coming out in 7th place. Now they're going to go into 6th place, and I think, well, good driving it seemed there if that was intended from Veloci. They've just run wide slightly. I think SMP have done the same in the background. It looked to me as if they were just letting them go by, but I'm not sure if that was actually the case.
Yeah, I think the damage that Veloci must have picked up from that earlier incident, they sort of pulled off the racing line to the outside, and Kitty Crew probably thought they were going to be able to squeeze through no problems, but the car was still lingering there on the exit, so when they maintained that racing line on the exit, they found themselves being dragged out towards the wall, and thankfully they separated themselves before it got all a bit ugly.
Well, it's Noah Schmitz in the Veloci car at the moment, and certainly appears to be struggling with further position loss coming up, because Veloci are now coming under pressure not only from SMP, but they are also coming under pressure from Advocatus as well. Advocatus, who are down to 8th place, are about to go back into 7th, it seems, with Veloci perhaps carrying some sort of damage after that incident that is hampering their performance. Let's see, does Advocatus go through? Yes, they do, and that looked very, very easy. It's very clear Veloci are really struggling now. They're going to have to come into the pit, surely. Yeah,
I mean, they've got to make a pit stop anyway, get a driver change done, so they might as well do that on the first opportunity, get the repairs underway, and they can try and focus on their race again. It's disappointing for them. Also, they didn't lose too much time in terms of actual track position, but it's the damage and recovery. It's such a long lap, and it's an early point in the lap to make a mistake. So that recovery is really painful for them. So we're at lap 16 now, so we're looking at the Ferraris being able to one-stop, something we didn't think was going to happen. So again, looking very good for MAD Motorsport up front to possibly make it 2 out of 2, even with a reverse grid. That's incredible.
Well, that was Veloci there. It looks like they're going to be coming into the pits. SMP Racing certainly are. They are in, and they are going to be doing their driver change now. So Ustamovic will be jumping out, and we'll have one of the other 2 drivers jumping in. You may see some of the driver changes going on if you look close enough over the far side of the arena there. There comes SMP Racing. The car now comes to a halt, but I can tell you the driver change has already been made. Savitov is out of the rig and chatting to some of his team. Next driver is now in. Back onto the track then go SMP. We will rejoin our leaders, which is now Wildcats. So it's Wildcats who are leading the way at the moment. It looks like Shoma Takaya is still driving for them. Shoma's going to be racking up some of his driving time in this race. There is a minimum and maximum amount of driving time that is allowed. So the minimum, of course, is required. Oh, SMP a little bit out of shape there, because they are on cold tyres, and SMP Racing just having to get settled down then. So SMP Racing just behind Veloci, who I don't think did come in. They've certainly still got some damage, even if they did. Going back to those driving times, the maximum driving time is 7.5 hours, and minimum is 5.5 hours. So unless you're Mighty 38, who have the exception, as they only have 2 drivers due to one of the drivers not being able to make it, that is the driving time that you must do, 5.5 hours minimum, but you can't do more than 7.5 hours. They're going to have to keep on top of that, aren't they, the drivers, as best they can. They are, of course, do have the adjudicators making sure that the driving time, that they haven't gone over that, but do you think that's going to be another thing that they're going to, of course, they have to take into account, making sure that they hit that minimum?
Of course, it's one of those things where you always want your fastest driver to do the most driving, because that's the way it works, but they have a maximum minimum driving time for each driver, and it's working it into the strategy as well, because these cars are mostly going to be fuel limited, but it's whether you pit before the fuel runs out and then gets very low, to change the option for the drivers and try and save them a bit of driving time, gain them a bit of driving time by pitting earlier than they actually need to in the car itself. So it's something that these guys would have all been messing around with before this event to try and find out the most efficient way of running it, and we'll see which way pays off at the end.
I mean, as you said, the amount of time the drivers have done just to practice for this, that'll be nothing to them. The minimum driving time probably will be very easy for them to complete in a way, because they're used to doing really long stints in the car. It's the hard bit is staying up for the whole 24 hours and getting to the end, and then jumping in the car for that 9th and last race.
Absolutely. It's, I was speaking to a few of the drivers, and they're able to actually rely on real-world experience of karting events, things like that, where having done 24-hour events in that, it helps them prepare for events like this, where 24-hour races, they're grueling, they're very tiresome, but if you've got that experience compared to someone who hasn't, it's going to be crucial as this series goes on. So we'll see how that plays out, but I'm expecting those guys who've got a bit of experience to maybe take over when everyone starts getting a bit tired, early hours of the morning, as that's when I think we're going to see obviously the most mistakes.
Well, this battle is getting a little bit closer that we are looking at now as we head down the start-finish straight one more time. We are on board with Kitty Crew, who are closing in on Williams Esports. Into the Dunlop chicane we go, and this is a battle we were watching a little bit earlier. It then settled down for a bit, but Kitty Crew, after their pit stop, are now on the back of Williams once again as they approach the Mulsanne straight through the left and the right uphill. You may see briefly the cars coming off the ground at that point, and through the very fast Tete Rouge corner where they've got to be careful of track limits there. You've got to have at least 2 wheels on the track, so that is the rule there. You've got to be very careful. This is CMP we're looking at now. CMP, who are they coming under pressure from someone? I think they are. They're not battling with anyone at the moment, but that front, the front of their car suggests that they certainly were at some point. So CMP, they were in a lot of battles in that first race, and they've definitely been in some battles earlier as well. As we now head down the straight, CMP have some pressure coming from behind, either that or they've just gone past Tyre Wall, one or the other. It looks to me as if Tyre Wall are perhaps the team closing in, so CMP could be coming under some pressure shortly. And when we got this battle up ahead as well, is this our Kitty Crew Williams battle? I think it is, and Kitty Crew right in the slipstream now as we go down towards Mulsanne corner. Are they going to make a move? No, they're not. Kitty Crew have already fought with Williams in this race. They've already made 1 or 2 moves on the Williams team. Now they're going to have to make another as we head down towards Indianapolis. Kitty Crew, solid day for them so far. 4th place, as we said, in race number 1. If they can make this move, this would put them into 5th. For Williams, they had a trip to the tyre barriers when going side by side with Mighty 38 in race number 1. Still finished a very creditable 6th place though, so if they are even to drop a position, they would be having a pretty good day as well. 6th place for them would not be a bad result at all to get the day started. Of course, as we delve further into this process, lots of different cars to be tried out. We're going to go all the way up to the modern prototypes as well. We've got the modern GTs rounding us off. We're going to use those twice throughout the 24 hours. As a sim racer yourself, Harry, what did you think of the format? Before you came and now you're here. What do you make of it? Do you think it's a good format for a competition like this, or would you have done it differently?
I absolutely think it's brilliant, to be honest with you. It requires a diverse ability and set of skills that each of these drivers are going to need. Obviously, they're not required to drive every single category, but there's still multiple categories that they need. As we got on the screen, the Kitty Crew car being sort of almost squeezed off the circuit on the inside, but they carry on without too much of an issue. But yeah, the format itself is great. Now we've got lots of different racing, lots of different cars, lots of different abilities required, and going next race we've got modern prototypes jumping from one end of the spectrum to the other. But for now, these guys seem inseparable on track. Obviously, Kitty Crew making that early pit stop, maybe trying to get an undercut. The Williams cars made a pit stop and come out right in front of it again.
And it seems to be getting a little bit darker now. The headlights are on circuit. Kitty Crew are starting to get even closer to Williams once again. We have got a car in the background. I'm just trying to see if that team is closing in or not. You can see the Live Championship standings coming across the bottom of your screen. But up towards Mulsanne they go. Oh, and a little bit sideways there for Kitty Crew, just getting a little bit out of shape and at the worst possible time as well. Advocatus is the team that we were trying to pick out in the background. They are in 7th place. They are closing in. Advocatus, one of the teams in the Ferrari, along with SMP and MAD. Then we have the rest of the field on the Ford GT40. And Advocatus just trying to approach this battle ahead. Could do with a helping hand, could the Advocatus team, with a little bit of overtaking up ahead. So in terms of the Ferraris, we did just mention who we have in them. Well, where are those drivers? We're looking at one of them at the moment. Advocatus bang in the middle of the field, it seems, in around 7th place. But what about the others, SMP and MAD? Now MAD are in 3rd place, but SMP are in 11th place at the moment. Harry's, of course, we're just at the start of the classes we're going to be going through at the moment, Ford versus Ferrari. Which class do you think? Oh, in fact, we'll come back to that because Williams have run wide, and this presents an opportunity to Kitty Crew. Kitty Crew have now drawn alongside, and Williams are in a lot of trouble here. They could be seeing themselves drop to 6th place. Let's see what happens when they get up towards Indianapolis. It looks as if Kitty Crew have been able to draw alongside at just the right time, but the move is far from over. They are going to lose that inside advantage when they get through this right-hander. That's if Williams are brave enough to stay on the outside, and they are. So Williams go back into that position, but Kitty Crew are now going to try the switchback out of Arnage. Let's see what happens. Let's see if they can do it side by side. Very good, clean racing this is at the moment. Let's hope it stays that way. Oh, and well, flirting with disaster there was Kitty Crew as they came out of Arnage. They had the rear end of the car all out of shape and just about got it recovered in time there before going into the barriers. Well, Williams have already been in touch with that barrier so far today. Kitty Crew almost were as well.
Absolutely, it's a beautiful bit of driving by both drivers. Side-by-side action, switchbacks going on for each corner, and just about avoiding disaster on the exit. As you say, we've seen disaster already in the previous race, but they have to go through here. Single file, Porsche curves. You're going to be hard pushed to make a move here, but you can try and line something up, put the driver ahead under pressure to try and maybe look into the final chicane. But I think they're going to be single file unless there's something extremely brave from Kitty Crew coming up.
Well, this battle is not going to stop there, I don't feel. And Advocatus are looking on to this. They can just keep it going. I'm getting closer, lads. And Advocatus continue to close in. And it looks as if we may even see battling going up towards the Dunlop chicane. Let's have a look. In fact, Kitty Crew not getting the best of runs out of the final corner, despite the fact that they just on the outside of Williams. I thought we'd see them do the switchback, but not quite. Oh, Williams, a bit of drifting going on from the Williams team up ahead. Just showing off now, aren't they, Williams? But they've got to get back composed because Kitty Crew are just behind. Bit of a wheelie there from Williams as well as we now head downhill into the left. And Williams, this is when it's going to be a little bit nerve-wracking because they're about to go onto the Mulsanne straight, and Kitty Crew are placed perfectly to make a move. So, well, let's see what happens. You can see how much closer Advocatus are on this lap now as we head down the straight, and Advocatus could be the ones that actually make a move here.
Absolutely. It's so difficult and, well, easy, I should say, for these two cars up around the Ford GTs to get sort of in and amongst themselves, battling, defending, attacking, trying different lines to defend a position, but ultimately being slower. And before you know it, in this situation, you've got Advocatus behind, slowly catching up, and if one thing goes wrong, they can try and sneak through on the exit of a corner, and these two then find themselves in a difficult position where they've got to try and overtake a car instead of just battling between themselves.
Well, the Ford's just getting a little bit of an advantage there over the Ferrari of the Advocatus team. But Advocatus, I'll tell you what, they will be back, because look how close it is between Williams and Kitty Crew. Kitty Crew, who we are on board with, just approaching, getting closer and closer. Braking zone approaching. Will they try and move up the inside? I wonder. The fans here in the arena certainly hope that that will happen. In we go, and Kitty Crew in the end just staying behind for the time being. So Williams it is who's going to lead us down towards Indianapolis, but this is where we saw it potentially end in tears last time around. That's where it was almost Kitty Crew into the barriers. They managed to get it regathered and regrouped just before that happened, but Kitty Crew in behind the Williams team, and Williams are going to have to defend surely here as we go up towards the right of Indianapolis into the left. Oh, and you could just see the front of the car lifting off the ground there from Kitty Crew in towards our Narge. Are they going to throw one down the inside? Let's have a look. No, they don't. Stay behind for the time being, but almost going into the back of the Williams car there were Kitty Crew.
Yeah, so they have to go through their single file. He's not quite close enough to be able to try and get alongside or send one up the inside of the car in front. But they've got to keep trying. They've got to keep the pressure up. Obviously, the conditions have changed since the start of the race. The clouds come in, the fogs come in, the lights have come on. It's very easy for these guys to lose a reference point in the braking zones or a turning in reference. So they've got to be really on it in these conditions. Although the rain hasn't arrived yet, we never know if it's going to turn up or not. But for now, it's definitely changed and definitely causing a bit of a problem for them.
Well, through the Porsche curves we go. We're on lap number 20 now of 32. Our leader has crossed the line to get that lap counter up, and that is, of course, MAD with Wildcats in second place. So MAD leading the way. Through the Ford chicane we go, and it's going to be battle resumed very shortly, isn't it? Williams just have a little bit of a gap at the moment, but don't let that deceive you, because Kitty Crew, once we hit the Mulsanne straight, will close back in again, and they, of course, will then have a chance to make a move into the braking zone of Mulsanne, and then more opportunities quickly present themselves in Indianapolis and Arnage as well. Through the Dunlop chicane we go. Advocatus, surprised that they haven't really been able to make their full impact or their first big impact on this battle yet, but they're just suffering too much down that long straight at the moment to be able to do anything. But that could change when we get to the second half of the lap. Here we go then, up towards Mulsanne straight. We're on board with Kitty Crew, and just watch them as we go onto the straight now. They'll just close in on the car ahead. The Williams car will just become bigger in our frame as they get into the slipstream. They do look close enough to me to be picking up a slight tow, and there's plenty of straight to get closer and closer. Kitty Crew will just start to now pick up that slipstream even more. The effect will become larger, and Williams will just have to maybe start defending, or do Williams have enough of a gap here, do you think, Harry?
It's going to be difficult, so that's quite a big gap for them to pick up a slipstream, but they're not going to be close enough anytime soon into the next braking zone to try and make a move. But now we see it concertinaing all the time. Now, one small mistake, trying to get on the power exit at a corner and get a bit of oversteer, it loses you a lot of time, and then you can give a run to the car behind. And whilst we're on board with this car, we've got to remember there's an Advocatus car not too far behind either, who's probably trying to assess these two cars ahead, because we know that these Fords are very quick in a straight line, but to try and then get them in the corners when basically they're trying to make up the time they've lost down the straight, and then by the time they catch up, we're back to the straight again. So we're sort of yo-yoing at the moment. We're just waiting for a bit of an error to appear, but never say never.
Well, my wishes of a battle didn't quite come true there, did it? Unfortunately, it's, well, from a neutral point of view anyway, if you're Williams, there's nothing unfortunate about it, but Kidsy Crew will just remain just about a second or so behind of the Williams car. Advocatus likewise fairly equidistant now in this trio, and it's still Kidsy Crew who we are following at the moment. On board we go into Indianapolis. Are they able to gain any kind of ground here? They've still got plenty of time to catch and pass Williams. This is only lap number 20 of 32.
So just looking at the top of the screen with the names and everything, it looks like some pit stops have happened up the front. Is the MAD car, which was running down in third for a while, I presume due to an early stop, so maybe that was an early stop that we may have missed. It's now back in the lead ahead of the Wildcat car and the Baguette car, so we're going to have to see towards the end of the race if they might have to try and perform some kind of splash and dash to get to the end again. We didn't see the pit stop, but they were running in third. They're now back up into first, I presume due to other pit stops. So it's worth keeping an eye on that, even if it's not on screen for us right now.
Yes, that's it. Pit stops are being played out, as we said, with driver changes having to be made as well. Minimum of 2 drivers need to race in each race, and MAD back into the race lead because of that. Wildcats into second. So although we did see some changes to the order for a time being, those changes have now been put back, and it's MAD who were our race leaders before all that kicked off. They're back into the race lead once again, and now through the 4 chicanes we go, and things starting to get a little bit closer once again. Now are Kidsy Crew able to get a better run down or onto the straight, shall we say, this time, and stay with Williams? And if they are able to get a good enough of a run, are they able even to pass the Williams car? Let's have a look into the chicane. We go through the left, now into the right. Looks like Williams are just looking a little bit stronger through this section to me. They've got to be careful on the exit of that corner as well, through the right. Now in to the left. Williams strong through the first half of the lap, through the first sector of the lap, and that's giving them a real advantage when we go onto the straight. It's keeping them in this position at the moment, and doesn't look like we're going to be close enough to see a big slipstream effect here, or are we? Am I going to be wrong 2 laps in a row? Be a disaster for me if it was. But Kidsy Crew at the moment, I think, look like they're going to stay in 5th place.
Yeah, they're going to be super frustrated at the moment. They're in that region where they're just about picking up a slipstream, but they've got to sit down this massive long straight for what feels like an eternity as you're sat in the driver's seat, knowing that by the time they get to the braking zone, they're not going to be in a position to make the overtake. It's so frustrating for them, but as we said before, they can just keep trying to apply that pressure, force the Williams team to make a mistake potentially, and then try and capitalise on that. But it's all they can do for now. They've got to keep plugging away.
That's exactly what they're going to have to do. Good to have Harry Jacks alongside us for this one, and we'll be here for the whole 24 hours. Of course, 4 commentators in total. We'll be rotating throughout the process. So James Kirk also going to be on for the next one as well. Into Mulsanne corner we go then, and out of the Mulsanne corner once again we see Kidsy Crew closing in. Now we have had that braking zone, but Williams just with the advantage at the moment. As we said, race 2, this is Ford versus Ferrari for this one. Race number 3 will actually see us go all the way from the 60s to the modern prototypes, and we'll have the Audi versus Porsche battle going on there. As a racer yourself, as a driver yourself, Harry, looking at the different cars and different eras we're going to be going throughout this 24 hours, 9 races, which one would you be looking forward to racing in most?
To race it myself, I reckon Group C. They were just monsters of a car to drive. You know, they're not very aerodynamically advanced, but the power and ability they have to go in a straight line, and it's just incredible. Sauber C9 being one of the main ones, Peugeot 962 of course. They're so fun to drive, they really are. But in terms of competitiveness, I'd probably be leaning towards the modern GTE, I think. I know there's a wide class of cars to choose from, and they're all in and amongst it together. So for close racing, I'd probably go modern GTE, but for just the sheer thrill of driving, it'd probably be Group C.
Well, it's good to have your views on what you'd be looking forward to most. Which do you think would be, what would be the biggest challenge, do you think, for yourself personally out of all those types of cars?
It's difficult to say, because I said they all have different characteristics, but I think it's just the sheer amount of power they'll have. Like Group C, for example, it's going to be rear-wheel drive with all that power. They're going to be trying to get on the throttle out of some of the slow corners, and it's just going to be lighting up the rear tyres for fun, basically, and you've got to try and tame it. But once you get the traction sorted and you can go in a straight line for a reasonable amount of time, everything just turns into a blur. It's incredible to see, but it creates good racing as well, because they're so difficult and unpredictable to drive. It keeps the field quite close together, unless you can master it, and then, of course, you're laughing, basically.
And Group C, well, if you're interested in watching that one in particular, that's going to be race 5 on our programme. So that will be coming up a little bit later on today. So make sure you do stick around for that. But Modern Prototypes is up next, and that's going to be a completely different challenge to what we're seeing now. Right, let's return to this battle, because it looks like Advocatus have been getting their foot down, and Advocatus are now right on the back of Kitty Crew. There we are looking back at Advocatus as we go down the Mulsanne straight. In the tow they go, but just in that Ferrari, just struggling to hold on to the Ford at the moment. Now they're in the slipstream. Let's see if Advocatus are able to stay with the Ford anymore. Down the Mulsanne straight they go. Kitty Crew looking back at Advocatus. This is our battle for 5th place. 4th place of Williams is just up ahead as well. But as expected, they just seem to be dropping away to Advocatus at the moment. But definitely they are now one to watch out for as we head down the straight. We'll give you the rest of the order in just a second. We're into the final 10 laps of the race now. No change at the front. MAD, Wildcats, Baguette, Williams. Then we're with this battle. Kitty Crew, Advocatus, Mighty 38 behind. Tyre Wall, then it's for Lotche. Then we have Keep It Simple, CMP and SMP. Oh, and someone wide there now. That was Advocatus there. That's the first time they've really had a chance of taking a position for a few laps there, Advocatus.
It is
a mistake being made.
Yeah, it's a shame to see, because they've been waiting so patiently for that opportunity to come. And so we were mentioning about the Kitty Crew car trying to pressure the Williams car into a mistake. They must have made a mistake themselves, as they backed away from the Williams car, falling into the grasp of the Advocatus car. And at the first opportunity of trying to put under pressure, they make a mistake themselves and lose all that time that they've gained. So it's disheartening for them, but they're still there. They haven't crashed. They've got no damage. They can continue. Not the end of the world, but just a bit of a shame for them.
Yeah, good stuff as ever. Right, back to the battle we go. It's unfortunately not becoming much of a battle anymore, but we've just seen with Advocatus how quickly things can change. But while we wait for that to change, we'll nip back and check in on our leader very shortly. MAD Motorsport still leading the way at the moment. They're some 29 seconds clear from Wildcats, and there they are on your screen at the moment. MAD Motorsport just been flawless so far today, particularly in the opening 2 races. We talked about this in race 1 a little bit. MAD appear to have spent a little bit more money at the start of the event in the first 2 races. Do you reckon to get a bit of a head start, or it could be that they're more comfortable in those cars? Do you think it's down to strategy or just personal preference?
To be honest with you, it could be a whole host of those options that you've mentioned. Tactically it makes sense, because they might have been able to take a note of what other people are going to be driving, and realising themselves that this is a good opportunity to maybe sacrifice some of the later races, pick up some early points, some early money in the bag for them, and then whatever comes on later they can deal with. But I think a lot of people have looked at the layout of the competition, seen that there's a lot of money involved in the final race, the modern GTE race, and they've spent money in that category, which has obviously left them a bit short for some of the other races where they're going to suffer. Now, other teams have taken the opposite approach and said, well, we know a lot of people are going to focus on that last race. Why don't we take the opportunities that present themselves to us, make the most of some of the other races, and that's the way they can do that.
Well, they've gone for the more expensive car in the next race as well, so MAD not messing around in the early stages here, looking to rack up the points as quickly as possible, and then I guess hang on towards the end. Of course, they'll take that advantage if they are leading the points into the last race with a bit of a head start. But MAD at the moment doing a fantastic job, and just going to have a quick look at what it is they're using in that last race. In a way, seems a little bit silly to even look, considering how long there is between now and that last race tomorrow, but they have gone with the Porsche, so they're not in the quicker BMW, so I guess it is important for them to have a head start, considering they are in the Porsche when we get to the modern GTE, not in the quicker BMW.
Yes, that's going to be the difficulty they're going to have in those 2 races, obviously, with the modern GTE. So both of them driving the Porsche, it's not the ideal car to have. The ideal car that we understand is that BMW M8. We know a fair few drivers have gone for that to give themselves the opportunity in those 2 races. But by doing that, as we said, they've compromised themselves in other races, i.e. these 2, which MAD have taken advantage of, and credit to them. It's a clever strategy.
Well, let's go back to this battle then. We are watching, of course, that battle, or we're returning to the battle, shall I say, between the likes of Kitty Crew, Advocatus. Now we're nearing the end of the race. Let's just check in with who is currently out there racing for their teams at the moment. Chris Farkas is out there from 1938. Just checking in then with the rest of the field. It looks like Jacob Bokert is in for the Wildcats team. Matthew Gator, we just saw a graphic appear of him. He's in for SMP Motorsport. Yuri Oki is in for Keep It Simple. John Hoyek is in for Tyre Wall Racing. David Kelly is in for Veloci. Savitov Mustamovic is in for SMP. Chris Cabrera is in for Baguette Racing. Robin Bechter for MAD Motorsport. And it's Evan Thorogood for the Kitty Crew. Ewan Yifan is in for Advocatus. Gary Mitchell for Williams. So if you're tuning in and you're supporting any of those guys, any of those teams, or if you're just enjoying the event, make sure you get in touch via social media. Send us all your thoughts, send us your support messages, and hopefully we will have the drivers interacting as well over the next 24 hours. At Le Mans Esports is where you can find us on Twitter, so do send in your messages to us. See the arena that we have here at Le Mans in the fan zone. It's starting to get a little bit serious between our teams now. They're all tucked into their garages, just working away at strategies ahead of this, during this race, shall I say. Long way still to go though. It's only race 2 of 9, of course. So we're going to be here all the way through until tomorrow at 11 a.m. We're going to be live the whole time. And if you're going to be at Le Mans yourself, if you're lucky enough to be coming down to watch the Le Mans 24-hour this weekend, make sure you come and join us in the fan zone. You won't miss us. I would say exactly where we are, but you genuinely won't miss us. We've got a big setup here. Come into the arena and have a watch, or you can sit outside and have a watch as well. We've got a massive screen outside playing up for the action, and you can sit and enjoy the weather and the sound of the cars and listen to some of the racing at the same time. Okay, Advocatus look like they are about to potentially make a move here on Kitty Crew. Kitty Crew got it all out of shape before the entry to Tete Rouge, and that has just allowed Advocatus to close in. But, well, of course, Advocatus are in the Ferrari, and that is just a little bit slower down this long straight. And it's perhaps a really frustrating situation for Advocatus. What do you think they can do to make this place? Because clearly down the straight it is not working. So how do you change your tactics now?
there's not a lot you can do at this point. No, they're set with the
very encouraging words.
But they've got a setup on the car that they can't change it now that they're on track. So inherently, the Ford is quick in a straight line. All they can do is basically try and get in a slipstream, stay as close as possible down the straight, and hope for something at another part of the racetrack entirely to make the most of their advantages in the car, which is going to be, it's a bit more nimble than the Ferrari. The cornering is better, the braking is better. So if they can stay close enough through this back part of the track, then they might have a chance through, let's say, the first sector. But it's so difficult to do. It's easy to gain time in a straight line when you're faster, but if you're faster in the corners, you've got to drive through the corners to make up that time. So they're going to struggle, but they're thereabouts. Kit Crew seem to be struggling a bit. It's strange. They were all over the back of that Williams car earlier on, and they get a bit out of shape through Indianapolis. And Advocatus, again, this is the part, 2 corners. That's all it takes for them to be right on the back of that Ford. There's a little bit of a gap between Arnage and the Porsche curves where the Ford will pull out again, but we can then go through Porsche curves, Ford curves, the whole first sector, Dunlop chicane. That's where the Ferrari is going to be at its premium. So if they can stay close enough here, we might see an overtaking around 30 seconds time, but don't quote me on that, please.
Let's go back to the action then, because we're just heading up towards the Porsche curves, and Advocatus are right on the tail of Kitty Crew then. Here we are on board with them at the moment. This part of the track is, well, nothing short of scary, and I can tell you that having gone around and watched there as well. So whether you're in the rig in the Esports Le Mans Super Series, Esports Series Super Final, or whether you're going around in real life, it is very scary, and a mistake made there from Kitty Crew, and Advocatus are going to go straight through. We've got someone slowing down as well, just ahead as well, so a lot of changes going on. Advocatus have gone into 4th place. Kitty Crew now are down to 5th, and it's Wildcats, I think, who are dropping down the order. Of course, they were up in 2nd place at one stage, but it is now Baguette Racing who have gone into 2nd place. Then we have up to 3rd Williams. So I don't know what's happened to Wildcats, but unfortunately they seem to be dropping down the order. I wonder if they've had enough. We've got, of course, Bryn around the arena. We can always get him over there and find out the full story. But unfortunately, seems to be that they're dropping down the order. Strange one, that. It just seemed that they were just slowing up. Must have had an off and just recovering.
Yeah, I don't know if they've made a mistake off screen and then that's them trying to recover from it, and they've obviously found themselves behind the battle that we were watching, because they've not carried on dropping off. They haven't gone into the pit, so it must have maybe been a mistake, and we've obviously picked up the recovery of that whilst watching that battle. But it'll be interesting to see here whether the Advocatus Ferrari is going to be quick enough to hold off that Kitty Crew Ford behind. You can see it in the distance of its headlights, but by the end of the Mulsanne, it's going to be right in front of that camera, I reckon.
Well, it fortunately seemed to be whatever it was. I'm sure we'll find out at some stage, but they've dropped down the order, and now they're going to have to try and recover. I can tell you, thankfully, they are still going round. We've got Bryn on the case. He'll be going to find out all the information for us in the full, bringing that to you as well. But we must now return to this battle, because there's lots of racing going on. There is changes of positions, and one just happened right on your screen. Kitty Crew going ahead of Advocatus. That straight line speed advantage takes them back into 4th place here. So it's changing all the time as we get into the latter stages of this race. Kitty Crew return to 4th place then as we go in towards Mulsanne corner. Oh, but diving down the inside there was Advocatus. There's going to be a little bit of contact on the exit. Well, you can't blame them for trying. Advocatus, at least they had a go. And Kitty Crew almost there. We're dropping down a position, but a bold attempt there from Advocatus.
It was a brave one, that was for sure. They've already set up the inside late on the brakes, as late as they could possibly be. They somehow got it all slowed down. Obviously, side by side on the exit, a little bit of Robbins racing, that's fine. But they find themselves behind the Ford again. Or is this, we're on board with the Ford at the moment? No, this is the Ferrari, sorry. So we've got the Ford in front of us. So obviously that straight line performance it had managed to get its position back, although the dive bomb attempt on the braking from Advocatus almost paid off. They're still, again, in a prime position to try and take advantage of that car through the part of the track where it's at its best.
Well, even though it didn't pay off, all it does do is put a lot of pressure on Kitty Crew. Kitty Crew will now know that Advocatus are willing to come from a long way back if they have to take this 4th position from them. And that is certainly going to force Kitty Crew into defending now when perhaps they don't need to at times.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. Every time you're going offline to defend, you're costing yourself time, and that Wildcats car in 6th, it's only 2 seconds behind. So once again, we could find ourselves with these two battling before they know it. They've got another car behind them to deal with, and just up the road, I presume, is that the Williams car? So that had almost disappeared a few laps ago, and now it's come back into sight. So although these guys are battling, they somehow managed to claw their way back to the Williams car with the Wildcats car just out of shot there. But if we're not careful, we're going to end up with a 4-way scrap.
Yeah, well, almost saw a move there from Advocatus. Thought they were going to try one down the inside. They thought the better of it in the end as they head down the start-finish straight. Kitty Crew are ahead of us. We are on board with Advocatus at the moment as we head up towards the first corner through the curve and now up towards the Dunlop chicane. It looks as if, as we said, this effect now starting to pay off with Advocatus making that lunge. Kitty Crew now feel the need to defend even more than they did before. And that's exactly what they are doing as they now come into the left. They are really rattled by this, our Kitty Crew. Williams also look to be well, don't seem to have the pace that they once had up ahead, but up through Tetrouge they go, through the right hander, now down Mulsanne straight. I don't think Advocatus with that straight line speed are going to be able to take the place, but they are going to briefly draw alongside and now get into the toe. Of course, it was a dive bomb last time we got to Mulsanne corner. What's going to happen this time?
I mean, I can't see it happening, but I'll be mightily impressed if they try it from this far back. They, last time, obviously, they were overtaken towards the latter part of the straight, whereas this time they're already behind. You said they had the better run through the previous corner, were alongside, but they can't match that forward in a straight line, so just frustrating for them. There's nothing they can do about it. They've just got to keep going. Lap 26.32, keep trying to push for that error from the car in front and then take advantage of it if it arrives.
Well, you'll see the difference now when we get into the braking zone, how much the Ferrari will close up. The Ferrari of Advocatus will just close in on that GT40 ahead of the Kitty Crew, of course. Down through the curve, we're getting closer to the braking zone now. As we said, Williams, we've got to keep them in account up ahead because it looks like they are being caught. Now into the braking zone we go, and you can just see how much the Ferrari of Advocatus close in. Not enough to make any kind of attempt of a move. That would be a serious lunge down the inside and would end in tears if they'd have tried from there, but Advocatus will continue to try and close this gap now as we head up to Indianapolis for the 26th time. It's getting closer in this battle for third place. We may not have a close race in terms of our two leaders, but we can't complain about this battle for third place. 26 laps gone, still all to play for with two different types of car.
Exactly, that's what we want. Now, they only had two cars to choose from, and we've got both of them battling on track. They're 26 laps in, and they're separated by yards. That's exactly what we want. And they both have their advantages and disadvantages, and this kind of track plays into that perfectly. So it's great to see. I think the Ford's probably in a better position with its straight line speed. It's easier to defend that and attack with that. Advocatus obviously got to work for it more in that Ferrari, but they're doing everything they can, and we'll see if before the end of the race they get any rewards from it. But again, that Williams car ahead of these two is not far away.
Well, only 3 teams chose the Ferrari going back to that point, and well, they're spread out all over the place. MAD chose it, they lead. Then we have Advocatus in this battle for 5th place. And SMP, not a great run for them so far. They're down the field. But Advocatus closing in then as we go down towards the Ford Chicane for the 26th time. Are they going to pull to the inside and try a lunge on the brakes? Let's wait to see if they come into view. They don't. So at the moment it will be Kitty Crew still in the 4th place at the moment. But one thing we are seeing here, Harry, although they can't make a move down the Mulsanne straight, we know that's obvious. Every time we've got to the last corner, Advocatus have been close enough to try and move into this Ford Chicane. They haven't tried it yet, but that does mean if they can stay where they are on the last lap, they can try and move into that.
Absolutely, no, last lap there's nothing to lose at that point, so if anything negative happens, if there's a bit of contact, then so be it. Whereas obviously if you do it at this point in the race, if there's contact, you get damage, you've still got 5 or 6 laps to try and crawl your way home. So they'll have that in mind, certainly. They know where they're strong, and we can all see it here that they're very strong towards the end of the lap and at the start of the lap. It's just this monstrous straight that we're about to come on to that they struggle. It doesn't help when they enter it like that.
Well, down the Mulsanne straight we go once more. 27th lap now of 32 is getting very, very close indeed. And Advocatus, are they just waiting and being patient for a potential last lap move? What about Williams? Are they able to hold on to 3rd place? Because Kitty Crew with this pressure are getting their foot down and trying to go after a potential 3rd place finish and take the $1,000 that goes with it as well. Advocatus will be keeping that in mind as well. They may be in 5th at the moment, but a chance of $1,000 just ahead. It's getting very, very close out front. MAD are still in the race lead. Long-time 2nd place team was Wildcats before there seemed to be some sort of issue which dropped them down the field. Bryn's with them now. Let's find out what happened.
Yes, Chris. I'm down with Wildcats at the moment, just talking to Luis about what happened to Wildcats after they dropped around 4 places. And it was because as they approached or going through Porsche curves, they got wide, hit a curve, and there's on one of the runoff areas, there's a bit of a bump. And it hit the bump, shot the car off into the tyres, and by the time they recovered, they're down in 6th. And they're saying they think that well and truly put pay to their race, but they also a bit frustrated because they looked like they were going to be going on for a win as the team leading still had one more pit stop to go. So that's kind of thrown the race for them. They're now on damage limitation, trying to get up the field as much as they can and hopefully get a decent points haul.
Well, there we go. That's the full story from Wildcats. Thanks to Bryn for getting onto that straight away for us, and Bryn will be doing that for us in the arena for 24 hours because, well, what else will we use him for? Right, up towards Indianapolis we go. This lap number 27 now of 32. It is getting very close for 3rd place rather than 4th now, so was 4th place battle we were concentrating on. Whilst we were away for that interview, I say something's happened, it's quite clear. I think there's perhaps been a mistake from Advocatus because they've just dropped away. Either they're dropping pace in general or they're starting to make 1 or 2 mistakes, Harry, but they've fallen away now, and that's just changed the complexity of this situation for 3rd place because it means Williams are now the ones under pressure, and all of a sudden in 4th place, Kitty Crew have a little bit of breathing space.
That's it, that's crucial. Once they've got to stop worrying about the car behind, though, for now at least, they can concentrate on their own race, their own racing lines, making sure that they're lapping as quickly as possible and not having to take alternative lines that are slower overall, but they prevent losing a position. So they've been able this last lap to just focus on their driving, and you can see how much time they've gained over the Williams car. And we're going to end up in a position that we were 20 laps ago, where the Williams car is having to defend from the Kitty Crew car. So we'll see how that develops. The Advocatus car is still there, of course. We've seen them be further behind and catch back up again, so it's still very much possible for them to do, but they're running out of time, to be honest.
It's getting towards the end of the race, and there was a mistake there from Williams just ahead of us. We're on board with Kitty Crew, and Williams definitely ran wide coming out of the Dunlop chicane. So, well, what do you think this could be down to, Harry? Do you think this is a case of tyres going off for Williams, or Is it just general pace, the fact that Kitty Crew have been under pressure, they've had to up their game? Do you think that's why we've seen this shift?
Yeah, I think it's more Kitty Crew picking up their pace. Because I think the Kitty Crew car pitted before the Williams car, so if there's any tyre wear issues, I think we'd be seeing it from the car in fourth place, the Kitty Crew car, but it's the other way around. It's the Williams car that's struggling. We don't know exactly why, but no, they've got a healthy gap for the time being. They don't need to worry about defensive lines or anything just yet. They could just focus on doing what they're doing. That's the best thing they can do as a driver. You can't focus on the car behind you and what they're doing. You need to drive your own race while you still can, at least, and they're not putting pressure on too much at the moment. But once they start picking up that slipstream effect, getting within outbraking distance of the car in front, that's when they're really going to be starting to worry. But for now, they're not too bad. The gap's around a second or so.
Thank you, Harry. Well, there you can see the Williams team in third at the moment, but for how much more? Because closing in is Kitty Crew. The gap between them is 1 second exactly, so that is not a big gap, and we've only got a handful of laps remaining, which we do. MAD Motorsport out front are getting those laps ticked by very, very quickly, and up in the distance we can see the Baguette Racing team as well, and that just goes to show how big the advantage is for our race leaders, because there's Baguette Racing about 54 seconds back. They're now being caught as well.
Yeah, it's odd. Baguette Racing, they're about to second place, so that's a really good result, but they are falling back into the grasp of Williams. So if Kitty Crew start applying the pressure and Williams pick up their pace, they're then going to drag themselves up potentially to the back of the Baguette Racing car, and they're going to have to start applying a bit more pressure. They might have just taken their foot off the gas a little bit, taken it a bit easier, make sure they're not going to risk the car too much at this stage, last 4 or 5 laps or so. So they're probably in just bring it home mode now. No, they're not going to catch first place. They're long gone, and props to them for that. But they can't take it too easily, as they need to make sure that they're not going to drop back into the grasp of the car behind them and start battling towards the end of the race. That's the last thing they'll want. They want a nice, safe second place for now.
29 laps have now been completed by our race leaders, MAD Motorsport. They are away and clear. They lead the championship coming into this race, having won race 1, and it looks like they're going to be unbeaten going into race number 3. So in terms of the championship race 1 results, shall we say, in comparison to this result, the race 1 result of course kicked us off in terms of the championship. How is the comparison now in race 2? Well, MAD were leading the championship coming into this. They are first. Veloci were second in the championship, and they are down the second half of the field. They did have a penalty, did Veloci, but have since been recovering. And as for third, are Baguette Racing. Now Baguette Racing finished in 10th place. Finished third with 10 points. They are now second, so Baguette Racing definitely up there as one of the favourites early doors with MAD. And speaking of Baguette, let's go and hear from them now.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I was just chatting to the guys from Baguette Racing to see what was going on with their position. Currently second. I'm currently standing right by them, actually. Williams are behind, catching them rapidly, and Kitty Crew, as you've been commenting on, also right on their tails as well. It's nothing wrong with the car, nothing wrong with the way it's performing or anything like that. It's more the fact that the person they have in that seat, it's not their strongest car, it's not their strongest track, and that's why. So that's the only reason. If they can hold on for another 3 laps, everything's good. If not, they're going to keep falling further and further back. Back to you.
Thanks very much, Brent. Exactly what we need to hear. Baguette Racing then on screen. We now know the full story there from Brent. We're on board with them at the moment. They are just dropping back into the clutches of this fight for third place so far. But Baguette Racing, this would be a fantastic result for them, particularly for their championship.
Yeah, just want to pick up on a point of the leader. We know that the race is quite safe for them, but they have just made another second pit stop by the looks of things. They've dropped back to about 20 seconds ahead of the Get Racing instead of the 50 of it that it was. And Advocatus, obviously we've seen a lot of them this race, but they've also had to make a second pit stop, I think, in the last couple of laps. So they've dropped away from the back of the Kikru car. So Kikru 26 seconds behind. Advocatus now in 7th, a minute behind. So they've had to, like we said at the start, the Ferrari needed that extra pit stop, and unfortunately it's come at the end of the race where they couldn't quite stretch out far enough. So it's unfortunate for them, but 7th place for now is still a decent result, but it could have been so much more.
That's a good point, actually. It's one that didn't quite see at first, but indeed Advocatus are dropping down the field. It's a real shame because they had such a heavy influence on this battle for 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th place. They gave us a lot of action as well, but unfortunately Advocatus, how much more of them we'll be seeing, I'm not so sure, because they are dropping down the field in 7th place at the moment. Not sure they're in danger of dropping any further with Veloci around 19 seconds ahead, but of course 3 laps around Le Mans is a long time, so there is every chance that we could see more changes for Advocatus, and we're on board with them now. Here they are, they're just looking a little bit out of shape there, Advocatus. You can certainly see that they are struggling, even just through 1 or 2 corners. They got out of shape coming into Indianapolis, ran wide on the exit. Advocatus look all over the place at the moment, unfortunately. Yeah. And even look, just grazing the barrier there as well.
Yeah, that was very close. Obviously, this late in the race where they've made that extra pit stop now, they're not really fighting anyone, so almost an unnecessary risk to be taking. But I think the problem with the guys, it's just full of fuel now. They don't get a choice of that. It's got loads of fuel on board. It weighs a lot more. The handling suffers from it. So they're in a position where they've just got to bring that thing home without wrecking it, which, if they're not careful, they're not going to do as they're sliding around the Porsche curves off the racing line. A bit of a worry, but they've only got 3 more laps to try and get through.
That's Daly out for them at the moment, and just as we said, struggling a little bit now, and those risks, as Harry said, not really needing to be taken, but just trying to make it to the end. I think that's a case of for Advocatus now. It's just make it to the flag. Wherever you finish, we finish, but they'll hope to be able to hold on to that 7th, but I can already see they've lost about 5 seconds to Veloci, so Veloci have gained around 5 seconds to them since we last checked in with them half a lap ago, so they're definitely going to be falling further down the field.
Yeah, the Advocatus one is weird. Obviously, we can see it on screen now. I'm presuming it's a second pit stop they've made, but the car looks almost undrivable. It's all over the place. Doesn't seem to be too much visual damage for us to see, but you can see through turn 1, they're almost losing the back end completely. So I wonder if they've had an accident somewhere and actually damaged the car and lost that much time rather than making an extra pit stop. It's a strange one that hopefully we'll be able to find an answer to, but they are losing a lot of time and they're struggling to control that car.
Well, Advocatus, I think it's got to be damaged, just the way the car's behaving through this first sector of the lap. It certainly looks to me as if they're carrying some sort of damage, and that's just going to be a huge effect to their result now. That could be anything, I guess, couldn't it? Perhaps just I don't think they were involved in any big battles, but it could have been collision with another car or a barrier as well.
Yeah, something seems to have happened, and it's going to bring a team that we've hardly mentioned this race, Veloci, into the fray. They're in 8th place. They've not, as far as I'm aware, had too much battles going on, but they find themselves in a position with a couple laps to go where if they get their head down and concentrate and really push, there might be another position for them. It's an extra championship point. It's not for money, but that championship point for the last race could come in handy.
Well, let's see how the car reacts now. We're getting to, when we get to Mulsanne corner, let's see how hard Daly is having to work just to keep this thing in a straight line. There we go through the curb. Of course, no such problems through there. Flat out, we are in 5th gear at the moment. You see 316 kilometers. Right, here we go into Mulsanne corner, and what do you think, Harry? Do you think that looks like a car with a lot of damage?
Yeah, that definitely looks like damage to me. I can't tell what, but it must be something to do with the suspension. To say, every time they try and turn the car into corner, it's just pitching to the front and the rear end just wagging its tail. It's got no rear end grip for some reason. So it was strange. We saw them perfectly fine battling with the other cars like Kitty Crew and everyone like that. But for some reason, they've dropped well off the pace, and they're really going to be under pressure for Locce if they're not careful. That'll be interesting to watch to see if Locce can close that gap before the end of the race.
Well, as if he doesn't get enough camera time, our presenter Bryn there decided to dive in front of the camera to get a closer look for himself. But let's have a look. Going into Arnage again. And struggling to, yeah, well, it's okay through there, but I'd say definitely that is a lot of damage, unfortunately, for Advocatus, but only a lap and a half. Well, I say that, it could be a couple of laps still, 2.5 laps still to go, with I think our race leaders already across the line, and the rest of the field still on lap number 30. Baguette Racing 22 seconds back from our race leader at the moment. Seems like that gap has come down. It looked as if we were about to have someone going into the wall of the Porsche curbs. That was Advocatus. Looked like they were heading straight for the barriers to me, and just being told that they actually did hit the barriers as well. Now they're going to be caught by Veloci very soon. Well, they're going to be put in a bit of a tricky situation where they've got cars catching them. What do they do? If you're carrying in perhaps a bit of damage, do you try and still defend positions, or do you just limit the damage and let them go straight past?
It's a difficult one because they're going to be on pretty much the last lap anytime soon. You never want to lose position, but when you've got a car that's handling the way that one is, I don't really think they're in control of whether they defend it or not, to be honest. You'd hope they wouldn't put up too much of a dangerous fight, shall we say. No, they can try and defend, but if that car's out of control, they can't be risking crashing into another car trying to defend a position. It's not correct driving etiquette, really.
Let's return to this. This is Williams now catching Baguette Racing, and this is the penultimate lap. So Williams right on the back of Baguette Racing there, and they are not alone. Kitty Crew are behind them as well. So it looks like we're going to have a three-way battle here for second place all the way to the end of the race, hopefully. Williams just waiting to make their move under braking, closing on that Baguette Racing car. Baguette Racing, we know, are struggling, so Williams will want to make this move as soon as possible. Going up to the braking zone, it looks as if Baguette Racing are now just thinking about defending, but they come across to take the racing line. Williams are going to stay behind in the braking zone. Baguette Racing got that stopped in time nicely as well. Kitty Crew remain in fourth place now as we head up towards Indianapolis.
Yeah, so Williams guys right up behind the Baguette Racing car. So we've seen that gap coming down towards the end of this race, and here is the evidence of just how close it's got. It's going to be interesting to see. We've still got a lap and a bit to go as far as we can see, so they've got to concentrate on trying to get that move done early, because if they don't get it done early, they're going to be having to look in the rearview mirror for that Kitty Crew car as well, and then we'll end up with a proper three-way scrap for the final two podium positions.
Well, up towards Arnage we go. This for the 31st of 32 times. Just looks like in fourth place there, Kitty Crew yet to make their real impact on this. They could do with gaining a little bit of time here before we go on to that last lap, because there's no doubt that when we get on to that last lap that Williams are going to be looking to make their move on Baguette Racing. Up towards the Porsche curbs we go then, and through the right to kick us off. Are Williams going to make a move through here? They've been very brave to do so, but they could force Baguette Racing into a mistake at the same time. Baguette Racing doing very well to hold on at the moment, but of course as I say that, probably spoke too soon, because Baguette Racing all out of shape there as we got towards the end of the Porsche curves. Williams now just tucking in behind for a run down to the Ford chicane, perhaps, as they go through the left kink. Now down to the Ford chicane we go, but don't think Williams are going to be close enough to make a move. No, they're not. So it's all going to come down to this last lap. Our race leaders, MAD Motorsport, have already started that last lap, and our second place battle is about to do so. But who's going to be in second when we start it? Because Baguette Racing have not got the best run out of the last chicane, and Williams look to be drawing alongside. They're going to have to tuck back in behind as they now go up towards the chicane. Baguette Racing just taking that tight line once again, covering off any moves from Williams. Has this allowed Kitty Crew to get closer? I wonder, are they going to be close enough to gain a toe down the Mulsanne straight? If they are, we could be 3 wide going down towards Mulsanne. Here we go into the left. Williams looking for a move up the inside, thinking better of it in the end. Kitty Crew, if anything, have dropped back. They are not closing in on this battle at the moment, but there's still time to do that as we now hit the Mulsanne straight. Down the straight we go, and this is when Williams are going to be planning what they do next, Harry, isn't it? They're going to be thinking ahead. They could be thinking not just to the Mulsanne corner, but 3-4 corners ahead.
Yeah, I think looking at that gap the way it is at the moment coming down this straight, I don't think they're going to be close enough to make the move under braking. I could be wrong, but I think they're going to have to try and fake a move if they can, try and get the car in front of the Baguette Racing car to try and defend offline, and then they can try and work from there and try and capitalise on a better racing line. But you see the gap's closing, the slipstream is working well, and they're not going to be far away coming into that braking zone. So we may see some side-by-side action into the next corner.
Right, here we go then. Thanks for that, Harry, as we go up towards the curve and up towards Mulsanne corner. Getting closer are Williams. They're just going to show their headlights in the mirrors of Baguette Racing, but Baguette Racing not biting at the moment. They're not defending at all. Through the curve we go then, and Williams closest they have ever been perhaps in this race as we get up towards Mulsanne corner. Are they going to make a move under braking? Let's wait and see. Looks like Baguette Racing have just covered it off enough for Williams to not go down the inside. Well, the line from Baguette Racing there, perfect. Just covered off any moves, any initial moves from Williams. But Williams now have half a lap still to make more moves. Indianapolis is going to be their next chance. Are they going to try anything there? Let's wait to see. We got that right-hander coming up first. Baguette Racing doing a good job to cover this off. Up ahead, of course, MAD are leading, but this is the battle we have to concentrate on between Baguette Racing and, of course, Williams as well. Into the left-hander we go. Williams get closer and closer. Are they going to be able to try something up at Arnage? I think Baguette Racing are handling this situation very well under the pressure they are under. No mistakes so far, but Baguette Racing still have to hold on by the time we get to the chicanes, of course. Williams have had a great run out of Arnage. Now they are getting even closer as we go up towards the Porsche curves. Kitty Crew, don't forget about them either. They may be off the podium and not gaining any money from this race yet, but they will gain a lot of points and potentially more places if something is to go wrong here. Through the Porsche curves we go. Into the left, up ahead, MAD Motorsport are coming to the end of the race. They are going to take victory. Here they go through the last chicane, and MAD Motorsport, 2 out of 2 victories for them. They take victory. $6,000 now they have racked up. But what about second place? Looks like Williams have got the run. Yes, they have. And Williams are going to dive into second place. But can Baguette Racing, can the all-French driver line up fight back? Oh, they can. It looks like Williams off the circuit. Baguette Racing. Oh, no. They've gone round. Baguette Racing round. Kitty Crew are going to go into third place. It was all or nothing for Baguette Racing. And Williams are going to take second place there from Kitty Crew.
I don't know what to say. I was speechless. Like, we waited 32 laps for that, and that was absolutely perfect. But what can you say about MAD? They were perfect, but disappointment for the Baguette Racing team. They took it right to the end, and unfortunately, they fell foul of, it's difficult for them. They're on the outside line, and obviously Kitty Crew sneaking through to third place as well, I believe, in that instance. So, brilliant. That was superb.
What was your thoughts on what you saw with that instant? Because, of course, we were on board with Williams, on board with the Baguette, sorry. They were off the track at one stage, trying to get back on, and just seemed to be offline, under braking, seemed to lose the car. What was your thoughts on how it all played out?
We'll need to see whether they were crowded off the track on entry, I think, first, or if the Williams cars come across and push the Baguette Racing car off track. Obviously we couldn't see from the view that we had, so we'll have to look into it. But they've done what they could in terms of trying to keep the position. They went late, they went deep on the brakes, they were off the racing line, they had no grip. It was very probably not going to work, and it didn't, unfortunately.
Well, another fantastic race in the Le Mans Esports Series Super Final. 2 out of 2 for MAD, though. Bryn's there for the reaction.
Reaction? I'm not sure what to say, reaction-wise, because you have no idea what was going on behind you, do you? It was an amazing race, but well done. It's a good habit. 2 races so far. You're doing all right.
Yeah, the strategy was let Box do all the thing. And then, because he's the fastest driver, and I finished the job, because the rulebook says minimum one driver change. So, in the next races, I'm going to compensate him with my driving time.
It's a very good strategy. Put the strongest driver in to get the gap and then let the other guys kind of maintain it. But well done. I won't take up too much of your time because we've got to get cracking with the next race, a big 3-hour race. I am going to go over here and talk to Baguette Racing, though. So if I get one of the guys in from Baguette, a lot of disappointment, understandably, there at the end of that race. Let's get one of you guys, let's get one over. So it was looking good, being pushed all the way by the guys down the end by Williams. And at the very, very end, what actually happened from your point of view?
Well, ask Chris, he was on the wheel.
From our point of view, it looked like, was it just an even battle? Did it look like something else happened?
Yeah, I mean, it was out of pace for the last, like, maybe 4 laps, and Williams was just catching up so fast. But he tried to defend, and we told him, like, if Williams have to overtake you, let him pass because we'll still be third. But then he just like messed up one corner, but Mitch didn't like let enough space to let him go back on the track, and then everything happened so fast, and we lost everything on the last corner.
It is incredible how after 2 hours it can come down to one final corner. Never mind, 4th place, still some good points for race 9. When we come to race 9, remember, it is 1 second per point they are in the championship, ahead of the team behind, gives them a 1 second head start, so they could get some points there too. So not too bad for them, ultimately, but not the result they wanted. Now, if this has whetted your appetite and you'd like to maybe have a look at what's going on in the esports world, you can always go to lemonsports.com and you can then sign up for updates about Season 2. And you know, But no, you might even be here at Le Mans next time. We'll see you here very, very soon.